was taking the starting reps. We saw that on Friday. Is that something you guys have kind of trended towards here in the back half of the spring?
No, I think just the last couple of days you guys have been out here, it's happened to play out that way. Gardner's doing a nice job. Anthony's doing a nice job. It's been good.
Maybe you commit to more of a starter quarterback.
I mean, we'll see how that plays out. Yeah, once we get going, but nothing like set in stone that we've talked about now. I mean, that'll be an ongoing conversation into the summer and then obviously getting into training camp.
The Anthony Richardson discourse is in full force, especially after we've seen the practice highlights of him with the Colts and their OTA session. And there's more and more people throwing out the idea that Anthony Richardson may end up starting for the Colts week 1. And it's kind of crazy how we've gotten to this point, because if you go back to just a few months ago, not many people even saw Anthony Richardson as a top 10 pick. His tape at Florida was just a little bit too inconsistent for a lot of general managers and a lot of fans of the game. But it was pretty clear and evident to everybody watching him that he had fantastic tools. He had a great arm. He had fantastic athleticism, and he's the prototypical size for a quarterback. He's over 6'4". He's over 220 pounds. So when he did take the field for Florida in his sophomore year, I think a lot of people did realize his ceiling and how good of a player that he could reach if he actually did tap into his potential and really reach his ceiling. Now, me personally, I've always been kind of scared of the quarterbacks who have fantastic tools but don't really put it together in the collegiate level. We've just seen so many of those type of prospects not translate from the college level to the NFL level that I'm just a little bit scared of taking them, especially high in the draft. I mean, Josh Rosen, Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold, all those guys were really drafted based on their tools and how they were seen as translating from the college to the NFL level and their ceiling. But to counter that argument, drafting quarterbacks based off of their tools also has a chance to be a home run hit. And we've seen teams do it like the Kansas City Chiefs. They got Patrick Mahomes when nobody saw him as a mid-first round pick. The Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen, they drafted him top 10. He was seen as a horrible pick at the time, getting him out of Wyoming. And now both of those guys are top 3 quarterbacks in the league, and the Bills and the Chiefs definitely don't regret their decisions in drafting those players. So because of a couple of those prospects really hitting who were really toolsy but not really have the same college production as you would like to see, teams in the NFL are a lot more willing to take risk on these guys now, and the Colts are the latest team to do so. The Colts drafted him with the number 4 overall pick in the 2023 NFL draft, right behind Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. And honestly, leading up to the draft, I was not the type of person that wanted to take Anthony Richardson in the top 5 picks. But after doing a lot of in-depth research and multiple videos that I made on all of these quarterback prospects, I actually started to like the idea of taking Richardson over the guys like Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. In my eyes, I viewed this draft class as a very high risk, high reward type of class, and that really begins with Bryce Young, who was seen as the top quarterback prospect by default, but he's also now going to be the smallest quarterback in the entire league. It's not even the fact that he's 5'9" or barely 5'10", it's also that he's barely 200 pounds. He's a very slender build. I just personally couldn't justify taking a quarterback that small if I were a GM of a team, so that led us to the consensus quarterback 2, which was CJ Stroud. And Stroud has his own problems. He wasn't a great processor in college. He had a bad S2 score, which is seen as a very high regard test for NFL GMs and teams. And there were also some concerns with him playing under pressure and also being able to play off script. So both of the top guys have some pretty big red flags, and then it got me thinking, why not just take the guy that has the highest ceiling if all of the quarterbacks have their own inherited risk? It's not like a Joe Burrow or a Trevor Lawrence was in this draft class where you know it's a guaranteed home run hit of a quarterback selection. So when it was all said and done, I did like the pick for the Colts, and now I'm very intrigued to see what Anthony Richardson can do and if they can develop him into being one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL. Whose job is it now to develop Anthony Richardson to being that top tier quarterback? Well, that would be Shane Steichen, and I have a pretty high opinion of him, especially with what he did last year with Jalen Hurts. Now, Hurts, similarly to Anthony Richardson coming out of college, was seen as a player that needed to develop his passing, but was seen as a tremendous athlete. From year 1 to where Jalen Hurts is now, the development from him has been absolutely insane to watch. The first year, he was really just running around, making plays with his legs and making some throws here and there, but he was way too inconsistent to be a top quarterback. He came back year number 2 and his release became a little bit more pure. He was more confident in the pocket. And by year 3, he once again improved, got his completion percentage into the mid-60s, and he brought his team to the Super Bowl. But I would also like to give Jalen Hurts his props. He's a very hardworking player. I'm sure in the offseason he put in a ton of work to improve as a player, but I still believe that getting Shane Steichen and having him implement that offense and really play to the strengths of Hurts got him to have his best season in the NFL. And now he's going to try to do the same thing with Anthony Richardson, but I think this challenge is going to be even harder, especially with how young and how raw Richardson is. But the other massive key for Jalen Hurts' improvement, in my opinion, was the arsenal of weapons that he had on the outside. The Eagles made a conceded effort to go out and get him some top tier wide receivers receivers. They drafted Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith with the 10th overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft. And then last year, they traded a first-round pick for bona fide superstar wide receiver A.J. Brown. So they had a great tandem of wide receivers. They also had Dallas Goedert at tight end, and they had a good running back in Miles Sanders. You combine that with one of the best offensive lines in the league, and then you instantly have one of the best situations for a quarterback in the entire league. And honestly, when you look at the Colts, who did win only 4 games last year, I think that their weaponry and their talent on offense is actually a lot better than you would expect it to be. They still have Jonathan Taylor, who led the league in rushing yards 2 seasons ago. He dealt with a lot of injuries last year. I think the Colts just kind of had a lot of turmoil as a team overall, but I expect him to be back next year and still be one of the best running backs in all of football. They have a very solid wide receiver duo in Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce. Pittman has honestly emerged as one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league for me. He really broke out into the scene in 2021. He had over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. And then last year with the quarterback clown show that the Colts had, he still put up 900 yards and 4 touchdowns. Look for him in Shane Steichen's offense to really take another step up this year and be a really big bona fide target for Anthony Richardson. Pierce is the big body wide receiver for the Colts and their offense. He had 600 yards and 2 touchdowns as a rookie last year. I think he's got a chance to be a really good wide receiver too, and I think he's going to take another step towards that this season. And then in the 3rd round of the draft, they selected Josh Downs out of North Carolina. I made a video about the top wide receivers in this draft class. He was in that video, and I see Downs as a fantastic slot wide receiver. It's exactly what the Colts need. They need a safety blanket for Richardson for those kind of short to intermediate routes, and that's what he's going to do for this offense. So as far as wide receiver talent goes, I think the Colts have more than enough for Anthony Richardson right now. They're also pretty deep at tight end. Jelani Woods leads that room with Kyle Granson and Mo Alley Cox as the reserves. They also drafted Will Mallory out of Miami. He puts the final touches on that tight end room. And the offensive line for the Colts has some good pieces on it as well. Quentin Nelson at left guard. He's a perennial all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber player. Ryan Kelly, he's one of the best centers in the league. And they also have a pretty underrated tackle duo, in my opinion, with Bernhard Raymond at left tackle and Braden Smith at right tackle. So as I'm recording this video in June 2023, if I were a Colts fan, I would feel fairly comfortable putting Anthony Richardson in the ball game starting week 1. I like the Colts coaching staff. I like his supporting cast, and now it's about him developing and really getting those reps to become the best version of himself. And it's been really exciting to watch some of his OTA highlights and the throws that he's made, and I think we're only going to see more of those, especially as we enter into training camp. But I do believe that the Colts should start Anthony Richardson week 1, and I think even if they do not start him week 1, he will be starting sooner rather than later. But let me know what you think about Anthony Richardson, and if you think he's going to reach his ceiling in the NFL, and also let me know how quickly you would throw him into the deep end and if you would start him week 1. But subscribe to the channel if you are new, drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it, and with all that being said, thank you so much for watching the video, and I will catch you guys in my next one.
I'm just here so I won't get fined. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But